much, Charlie. Thank you for presiding this evening. I know you consider it a great honor, as do I, to participate in this wonderful, wonderful tribute to Senator Kennedy and this institute. Charlie talked about how he liked watching the Senate and the House of Representatives. I also know that he likes politics, and we might talk a little bit about that in a moment as well. But first, I want to thank Vicki and Teddy Jr. and Patrick and Kara for giving me this opportunity to participate this evening. I consider it a great privilege as one who has been a fan of the Kennedy family my entire life. Jack Connors, thank you for what you did to make all of this possible, and just seeing the beautiful institute overlooking the water, which Teddy loved so much, to study the Senate, which he revered. How perfect. In the House, we're very pleased to be able to do our share to help with the Institute. We'd like to know how the Senate works, too. But I have to tell you that although Teddy did not serve in the House, he did serve with the House. And he has family ties there. Honey Fitz served in the House of Representatives. President John F. Kennedy served in the House of Representatives. And now, of course, Patrick Kennedy serves in the House of Representatives. And all of us who ever worked with Teddy to follow his lead for his grand vision for the United States learned from him. So we're proud to do our share. In fact, when this appropriation was coming up, Dave Obey, our chairman of the committee, he said, we are not having any initiatives in any appropriations bills whatsoever that are named for any member of Congress or the Senate, except one. Except one, and I want everyone to know why this is the exception. And so we'll be pleased to join the Senate in supporting the Institute. We've all, as I said, have learned much from Teddy Kennedy. A person who worked very closely with him from the House side has been mentioned already by John Kerry, George Miller. And George Miller tells the story when he came to Congress, a newcomer about 30 years ago. He went over to see the master at work. And he went to a conference committee, and Teddy said to him, what are you doing here? You're not going to get any amendments passed. And George said, no, I came to see how you do it. And what he saw was a master at work, for sure. He saw a person who began his initiatives legislatively with a clear sense of purpose. George said he was always the most prepared person in the room, and he had the best staff, But he would come with his commitment. He knew what he was fighting for. And he had many arrows in his quiver, humor being one of them. One of the stories George liked to tell is that one time when they were, now we've gone on later and time has gone by, George is a more senior member, he's there as a chairman, and he's working with Teddy on the, actually ranking member, No Child Left Behind. And Teddy was going on and on about how he wanted to be, and one of his fellow Democratic senators stood up and said he had another idea. He wanted to do it a different way. And as he sort of confronted Teddy that way, Splash came and jumped on him, put his paws on his shoulders. And Teddy said, I don't like your amendment, and Splash doesn't think much of it either. Teddy had a way of calling, as Jack Connors said, he had a way of calling and getting his way. One day he called, and for those of you who know about this, you'll know about it, called and said to George Miller, you have an appointment with Eunice today. Well, that's in itself is fraught with so much meaning, so much change in schedule and agenda and priorities, not only for the day, but for to do what Eunice wants. So he said, I don't have it on my schedule, Teddy. He said, you do now. You do now. And that was the way it was. But it was a thing where he respected the House very much. It was not unusual for him to come over to a House member's office and say, I want to have a meeting, I will come to your office. Not unusual for him, as I said, quite unusual for a senator. He would invite House members, even Republicans, to the hideaway in the Capitol. He always treated people so beautifully, so beautifully. He had, again, an influence on all of us. And Steny Hoyer, and I know Wes here, I don't know if Steny is still here, but we both worked in Danny Brewster's office in January 1963. I was going to say 93. 1963, how did all those years go by? When Teddy, we were all starting at the same time, as interns, as assistants, etc., and Teddy as a senator. We didn't know him, I didn't, but anyway, what I did know is that right from the start, the Kennedy standard of excellence was well known on Capitol Hill. We were told, as workers in the office, that in the Kennedy office, constituent mail that came in the morning would be answered by the evening. It was a standard, we were told, that was begun by President Kennedy when he was a senator, and one, of course, that was later carried on jointly with Senators Bobby and Teddy Kennedy. But that remained the standard. And when I went to Congress 20 years later, that's what I told my staff in Senator Kennedy's office. So what was very important to him was his love of his constituents, his love of Massachusetts. He knew that every opportunity he had to serve our country sprang from them. I remember, I reminded him of this the day I was elected Speaker. He sent me this big presentation, I guess you would call it. It was a framed composition of all pictures of all of the people who had ever served as Speaker of the House. And in the center, bigger than the others, was this woman's picture, the first woman Speaker of the House. And he was so excited about the fact that he had come up with that idea. So when I saw him that day and thanked him in person for it, he said, you know, he always had that way of making you feel very special. Here are all these speakers. You are the center of it all now. And I said, you know, Teddy, I'm not just the first woman Speaker of the House. I'm the first Californian to be Speaker of the House. And he reminded me that there were 8 speakers from Massachusetts in the display back in Massachusetts. But he also said to me, and he did write this in the note, he said, I'm just thinking of what my mother would say. She would say, tell that young, well, everything's relative, tell that young woman Speaker of the House, Nancy, that it's going to be 20 or 30 years before she ever gets tired. So that was what he thought about Rose and the tirelessness of Kennedy, the Kennedy enthusiasm for everything. His relationship with the House became even more special. Oh, did I tell you my role was to tell you about his relationship with the House? His role with the House became very, very special when Patrick was elected to Congress. It was a beautiful sight to see, father and son. He took such pride in Patrick's leadership. And I think he learned a thing or two from Patrick, certainly about the House. And weren't we all proud to see the Kennedy legislation, mental health parity legislation, pass the Congress?